So I can like start the YouTube stream though. There we go. How's it going, YouTube? Make sure you hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe if you have not already. We're looking for some debates. Moving on to Steve. Trump is my hero. How's it going, Steve? Do you support Trump?
Yes, I do.
Why is that?
There's a lot of reasons, but one thing I want to ask you, because I've been watching quite a few of these streamers, podcasts and anti-Trumpers and all that.
Sure.
I have a question for you. Tell me why I should leave the Republican Party and join the Democratic Party without mentioning Trump one time.
Sure. I think that the Democratic Party has more to offer for the average American compared to the Republican Party. And if we take a look at the history, progressive or liberals are always wanting to progress America and move America forward. For example, the progressives right now that are rising are anti-Israel, right? They don't want to fund this genocide, and I agree with that. And I think some Republicans are starting to realize, like, hey, we shouldn't be funding this Israel because they're committing a genocide. They're also pro healthcare, right? Not healthcare, free healthcare for all, but free Medicaid for all, kind of like Bernie in 2016, which is a good start. And they're also like taxing big corporations, getting corporate PAC money. I think that that's something we're seeing a rise in progressive liberals, like getting corporate money out of politics, APAC money, any other foreign money, like I said, any corporate money. And we're seeing that more a rise within progressives, not really within the Republican side. Compared to the Republicans are pro giving tax cuts to the rich. They're not really for the average American. And if you take a look at history, every single Republican has increased the debt. Every single Republican has created a worse economy than what they were handed, compared to Obama, Biden, compared to Bill Clinton. And then you compare it to the last three Republican presidents, Donald Trump. I know you said not to mention him, but you also have Reagan. I know he wasn't the last three, but you have Bush, um, and then Bush Sr. And you can compare all those presidencies to the Democratic ones that I mentioned, and they're overwhelmingly better for the average American. They create more social safety nets for the average American.
Right. So basically, everything you just mentioned is a woulda, coulda, shouldas because none of that you mentioned has been done. It's what you want, what you stand for, what you strive for. Has there ever been universal health care?
No, but we're seeing a rise in progressivism all across
Doesn't
the
matter.
country, i.e., Zoran Mamdani.
Again,
Zoran
but
Mamdani
none
was
of it's been done
Zoran Mamdani was
ever.
able to secure 3 wins against Hakeem Jeffries. So
So
we are
why
seeing a
has
shift. And
never
I
been
believe
done?
if we, listen, Steve, I believe if me and you have a conversation, I'm able to change your mind and you vote for Democrats in the midterms and you tell people to vote for progressive Democrats in the midterms, I believe we can have universal Medicaid for all. I believe that we can get money out of politics. I believe that we can get foreign money out of politics. And isn't that what we all want? To get money out of politics so that the vote comes back to the average
You
American.
guys
Also,
always
it looks
say
like you're
you
covering
want
your mic. You want to
universal
like
health
take your
care.
hand or lift
Why
off your
hasn't it been
phone.
done?
Looks like you're covering your mic. I didn't really hear you. You want to repeat that
I
for me?
said, all of you always
There you
say
go.
you always say something about universal health care. Why hasn't it been done then?
Because Bernie Sanders didn't win 2016 because of the establishment Dems. The establishment Dems like wanted to kick out Bernie Sanders because of like his houses or whatever. Blah blah
You
blah.
think that
It
he's the
was
only one
ridiculous.
that ever brought up universal health care?
Absolutely not. But that's a prime example.
No, but why hasn't it been done?
Because there hasn't been a shift big enough allowed
Do you
within the
realize how
establishment.
expensive that would be for 350 million people?
I understand the cost, but do you
No,
understand
you
that the
don't.
proposed
How
the
much you think it
proposed
would cost?
the proposed budget for the military right now is $1.5 trillion. Cut that in half, we'd still have the biggest
You can't
military budget
cut
in the
that in
world.
half and still be the most powerful nation in the
Yes,
world.
we would. Yes, we would still have the highest military budget in the entire world, with the next one combined.
Why is it you think? Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about the military. Why is it Iran, Venezuela, Cuba are all backed by who?
Let me guess, Russia,
Russia, China,
China,
I,
sure.
right?
I mean,
Okay,
yeah, there's some intelligence, sure,
okay. No, they're totally backed by. They
sure,
use Russian Chinese military
sure. I agree with that,
equipment,
sure.
security. Okay, and so when we went into Venezuela and we went into Iran and Q and
Which, by the way, we're losing Iran.
no, we're not. But
Yes, we are.
okay, but what did Russia and China do about it?
They started sharing intelligence with Iran. That's what they did.
They did absolutely nothing about it. You know why they didn't do nothing about it?
Because we're a superpower and we have nukes.
Well, they have nukes too, silly.
But they know if we, they
Well,
know if they
nukes
attack
has
us,
nothing to
we're
do
gonna
with it.
attack them. No,
They
it does.
know,
Mutually assured
they know
destruction.
damn well
They don't want to start a war. We don't want to start a war with anyone that has nukes. They know
right.
they
I
attack
understand
us,
that, but
we're
there's
gonna
no
attack them.
way
No, it does.
China
Mutually
and
assured
Russia
destruction.
combined.
They don't want to start a war. We don't want to start a war with
They
anyone that
know
has
that.
nukes.
They
They know
right.
they
I understand
attack
that,
us,
but
we're
there's
gonna
no
attack
way
them.
China and Russia
I don't want to start a war. We
combined.
don't want to start a war with anyone that
If you
has
look at
nukes.
Russia,
If you look at Russia,
I understand that, but there's no way China and Russia
I don't want to start a war. We don't want to start a war with anyone that has nukes. If you look at Russia, if you look at Russia,
there's no way China and Russia
I don't want to start a war. We don't want to start a war with anyone that has nukes. Russia, if you look at Russia,
there's no way China and Russia
I don't want to start a war with anyone that has nukes. Russia, if you look at Russia,
there's no way
I don't want to start a war with anyone that has nukes. Russia, if you look at Russia, there's no way I don't want to start a war with anyone that Talking about.
So you're okay.
Talking about. If America
So
is
you're
in
okay.
genocide of talking about. If America is in 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 genocide talking about. If America is in talking about. If America is in talking about. If America is in